Good afternoon. Welcome again. I don't think we were necessarily expecting to have a further media briefing today, but quite a number of developments that are worthy of briefing this afternoon. I'm conscious, having received feedback via social media, that I need to be more brief in my introduction, so I will get straight into it. And further restrictions are being announced, unfortunately, as a result of the COVID-19 situation. From 6:30 p.m. today, nightclubs will have to close. Bars that do not serve food will also be closing. And pubs and restaurants that serve prepared and plated food are also expected to take a very responsible attitude in relation to their handling of their clients. Sorry, forgive me a second. Thank you very much. Let's come back into life. I think it's worth technology. I think it's worth emphasising that we envisage this as being as a temporary measure. Very much as we talked about yesterday in relation to schools, the concept of pause and assess, and again, Dr. Brink will explain some of the rationale behind the decision that we have made today. Restaurants and pubs which do serve food will need to observe these new restrictions, which will mean that alcohol can only be served at tables and with prepared or plated food to customers that are sat at the table. Now, some residents of the island will well remember that this was basically the way that the island used to operate on Sundays, and it's some of the rules that actually apply on a Good Friday. So it's using, if you like, a tried and tested methodology that the island has been used to in the past. These temporary measures will be reviewed in 10 days' time, and they are part of the response that we talked about yesterday to delays in receiving the results for coronavirus, and we can talk a little bit more about where we are in results and our access to tests as well, as ever things continue to move. Efforts to resume the timely testing through the UK have been encouraging, and there have been some improvements in the last 24 hours, and test results will be coming back, are coming back. And we expect some of the backlog to be cleared as well. And work to, again, reiterate the work to introduce on-island testing in April is also continues to advance well. As we stated yesterday when we made our announcement on schools, we are in a position where it frankly has become less clear over the last week or so to what extent coronavirus may be spreading within the community, and we will not take any chances. And bars and clubs do present a very real risk. We're very conscious that a significant number of students have returned to the island. They've come from the UK, where only a few days ago they were it was part of the social fabric of an expectation of life within the UK, and the UK student universities and establishments that they would be out and about. Life has changed very rapidly for lots of people in lots of places, but we need that culture we need everybody to accept that the culture needs to adapt very, very quickly here, and we're not prepared to take any chances that anybody who has come back to the island, even if it was before the mandatory self-isolation period began at midnight on Thursday, that they do not understand their obligations in relation to being out and about. Now, we do understand that this is going to come at very short notice to licensees, but I'm afraid I'm not going to make any apologies for us taking swift actions to protect our community. This is, as we all know, a very fast developing situation, and we are having, frankly, to react in real time. We believe we've come up with a proportionate solution given the circumstances, and frankly, we expect licensees that they must not only respect the new legal restrictions, but also the reasons we are introducing them. And I think one of the things that has driven us to this decision is we have become aware that a number of licensed establishments frankly have taken quite an irresponsible attitude in terms of responding to this crisis. And also we're well aware that a number of young people have been planning to take the opportunity to go out tonight as the end of term, obviously with term having been brought forward the end of term having been brought forward as a result of yesterday's decision, plus the return of students from outside the UK. So we are very much responding to the community's response, and I'm going to come back to that as well in terms of our expectations of the community. And really what we are saying, quite frankly, is that we actually expect everybody, customers and licensees, to be following the spirit, not the letter of the law. If there's anybody out there who looks at this set of restrictions and thinks, okay, how can I get around this? What can I do to get around these rules? Then frankly, they have completely failed to grasp the severity of the situation which this community is faced with, and our determination to act and protect the wider interests of the community. We will have absolutely no hesitation, and I think we've demonstrated our determination to do whatever it takes, as I've said before, to continue to introduce stricter and stricter and more prescriptive rules if we judge that it is the right thing to do. We don't want to be doing any of this, and as we've said several times this week, we want and need, so far as possible, as many businesses as possible to continue trading for as long as it is possible and safe for them to do so. But it is entirely dependent on everybody in the community understanding their serious level of responsibility to minimise the impact of this virus. Young people, the 18 to 30, 18 to 35 age group, are not immune from this disease. And again, Dr. Brink can talk about the experience from outside the island. But also, even if they were immune, which, as we've said, they're not, the responsibility to their fellow islanders, people they either know or don't know, is the reason that everybody needs to take this very seriously. And that's what today's measures are all about. It's about reducing contact between individuals and to support the social distancing recommendations. The reality is that a nightclub, by definition in terms of its role, is not about social distancing. It's about social proximity, about bringing people closer together. So it's a very difficult environment, particularly when you put alcohol into the mix. So that is a fairly significant change which I wanted to talk about. What we're going to do in terms of the lineup today is Heidi will speak a little bit further in a moment on that issue. We also obviously have the latest update from Dr. Brink. We have the opportunity for questions for Jason Moriarty in relation to some of the issues around the implications of bringing the end of term forward and how that's being managed, particularly in relation to childcare for essential workers. And also we're pleased to have Rory Hardy back again to talk about not only obviously enforcement at the borders, but also there may be some questions arising about the enforcement issues which arise from today's measures as well. So if I may, I'll just pass over to Heidi. We'll run through that order and then obviously questions as normal. So Heidi.
I'll just speak briefly about the measures that have just been brought in. Nightclubs are closing. Gavin made very clear the reason behind that, but bars that can serve food and people can sit down, and restaurants are remaining open, but we are making sure and asking people when they visit the pubs and restaurants to maintain the social distancing. It's really important you do so we prevent the spread of the virus as far as possible. I hope everybody understands that by now. This is a serious issue. It is affecting everybody, and Nikki will give more information on that. It's not just the old that are going to be affected. I think a lot of young people have been thinking, it doesn't matter for us, it's not going to affect us. More evidence is showing that might not necessarily be the case, so we've all got to be vigilant here. And anyway, we should be doing that. We should be supporting all of the community, because we're all in it together here. So the interesting thing is we've been looking at a solution from the past as a solution for the present, and I think that's a really interesting way. We're looking at things that are appropriate for Guernsey all the time. So again, I will reiterate how people need to understand and the messages and what we're trying to do here, and not think and ask about, well, why are they doing it in another jurisdiction and not doing it here? So again, that's a message I want to reiterate. And also I'd like just a word to students. So it's been a really traumatic time for them. I know from a personal point of view, it's in fact impacting our family and students not knowing whether they should come home or stay where they are, knowing what their exams are being messed around. So it's a really difficult time for them. But it's just to say that we all understand that. Everybody wants to make everybody's life easier, and that will happen. But at the same time, students, please understand why we're doing the measures today, because it is to support the whole community. And this, in the long run, in the whole scheme of things, you will be grateful that you did the right thing and not go out and try and go out with a bunch of mates and have a whale of a time now, because it might not may be very different in a few months' time. So that's really the essence of what we're trying to do now. I would just like to pick up on, in terms of the testing equipment. I did tweet earlier a picture of the first bit of kit that we've got. We were absolutely delighted. It's in the new Path Lab, waiting to be installed. That's the extractor. And the other piece of equipment, the cycler, is on its way. We've got the shipping details now. It's on its way. So I just really would like to thank all those staff who've been working behind the scenes to make this happen. It's not just a case of where it's on order and let's wait for it. These people have been pushing every single day to make sure that we know we're getting this bit of equipment, where each bit of equipment was in the process. About getting the training online, so we know that we can do that training easily remotely, so our staff can be trained by the people who produce the piece of equipment and know how to use it. Nikki might be able to give more details about all the other little bits in there, but just to say this is happening sooner rather than later than we thought it would, because of the sheer effort that has been going in. And so that's where we are at the moment.
Great, thank you, Heidi. And so, Nikki, if you'd like to give an update.
Yes. So this afternoon we've had a further case of COVID-19 on the island. I'm pleased to report that the person is doing extremely well. I'm also very pleased to report that we were able to identify the case very quickly. The case went into self-isolation. They have had minimum contacts, and as I said, they're doing really well. From our point of view, as I said to you some weeks ago, we identified France as an area of interest for us. We've always said that we need to use local data, look at what's going on in different countries, look at the proximity of those countries to us. And the latest case, in fact, had been on holiday in France some 10 days ago or so. So it was picked up in a timely manner. We are busy contact tracing. We heard about this case about an hour or two ago, and we're already deep into contact tracing, which we hope to finish in the next few hours. So I think this shows that this is a rapidly evolving situation. However, what I'd like to emphasize is that this is a case that came from France to us, so still is evidence of an imported case. So to date, we have no evidence of ongoing community transmission within our community. So an important development for us, and we'll carry on working into the evening on this to ensure that we get all the contacts and we give their contacts appropriate advice and quarantine information.
Great. I just wonder whether it's worth, Nikki, you just expanding a little bit on the evidence base for the decision, in particularly in relation to what might be regarded as the nighttime economy that I spoke about earlier.
Yeah. So what we've said to you from the beginning is that all of our decisions would be based on the evidence we could get. We've acknowledged that this is a rapidly evolving situation with a new virus. So we looked at one piece of evidence in particular, which related to the transmission of swine flu in 2009 within a nightclub situation in Singapore. And what we saw there was a single case that resulted in over 40 additional cases and across 4 generations. So there were 4 cycles of transmission. So again, if you look at the nightclub and you look at our rules for contact tracing, we define a significant contact as more than 15 minutes face-to-face within 2 meters. So if you think about nightclubs and bars and pubs that are really crowded, by definition you'll have people way closer than 2 meters, and in addition to that you have the effect of alcohol with people perhaps being more disinhibited. So I think from our point of view, again, it's looking at a proportionate response. So instead of saying, well, let's close everything, we've tried to look at what we think are the most risky activities that will be associated with transmission of COVID-19. And it's that close contact that is really important. So there are other parts of the hospitality trade, if you can have some spatial distancing, have some enhanced cleaning and so on, there's no reason at this stage that we don't feel that those areas can stay open. So again, it's looking at the evidence, taking the evidence to underpin our decision making and considering whether it's proportionate. And all of those things we took together to come to the decision yesterday.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I think the other thing I would like to say in relation to the decisions on licensing is how the Civil Contingencies Authority, which has met twice today, has been working very closely with the Committee for Home Affairs and the President of that committee, because they are the licensing authority, so they're the ones that need to deal with the licensed premises. And so it's a real demonstration again of very close and effective and very timely government working as well. And again, I'm sure Rory will be happy to take some questions in relation to some of the issues that may arise out of that. But before we go to questions, I think it would be useful, Jason, if you could just speak a little bit about the follow-up to the decision taken yesterday. We're again conscious that many parents will have some questions and concerns around that decision and in relation to childcare. So if you wouldn't mind just addressing that.
Of course. We're very conscious there has been an awful lot of information that has been released over recent days. Clearly the announcement that was made yesterday about schools, the information was committed to be uploaded today to provide further detail. The reason why we went out yesterday was to give as much advance notice as we possibly could, recognising both from a parent-guardian perspective but also from the perspective of employment and employers. It was to allow people to have those conversations. So that information will now be online at gov.gg/coronavirus, and so there is information around what that looks like by way of key workers and who constitutes being a key worker within our community, what those arrangements should be, and it crosses all aspects of education for both state schools and independent schools, pre-school as well. So it gives a real range of information there, and there's also some frequently asked questions which we hope will provide that range of a range of sort of information that those who are out in the community who are seeking that clarity will provide. If I could just also take this opportunity just to reflect on some of the other information that we've provided, just to say that there are updates again. Please do check online. We know that from an essential workers perspective, around looking at those key roles within the bailiwick, that information again is online if you think that you are a key worker to support our economy, our healthcare services, public sector workers. That information and that criteria is there, and there is a population management administering those, and we're triaging those applications, and they are being administered by experts around that essentiality. So please do look at that if that is relevant to you. The other key area that I would just like to mention is around the looking at the essentiality of making sure our healthcare workers is really key, and I think that's also relevant for our provision of ongoing school care going into the following weeks. And I think that what we are looking to also provide is potential care over the Easter holidays. So that's something that the Office of Education are continuing to look at, so we can ensure that criticality of workforce support as we go over the coming weeks.
Okay, excuse me. So we open it up to questions. Who'd like to begin? Yep.
Can you just clarify if now everyone is supposed to social distance, it's not just people who are over 65? And going forward from that, the decision regarding nightclubs, obviously you mentioned how social distancing is virtually impossible in nightclubs? Why has the decision been taken now as opposed to maybe a week ago, for example?
Okay, well, if you wouldn't mind answering that question in relation to social distancing for everybody or not.
Yeah.
That's the first question.
So from our point of view is we fully acknowledge that island life has to continue, but what we're asking people is to just take that extra precautions. So we're not saying to a 10-year-old child you can never see your friend for the next 5 months, but what we're saying is don't have a party with 20. So we're trying to limit those contacts, bring in enhanced hygiene, encourage people to look at alternative ways of greeting. So it's that whole island approach, but with a healthy awareness that this could go on for months. And what we want to do is keep the community on board as we give some hard messages. And I think from our proportion that community support is going to be key to how we manage that. So it's no doubt social distancing is one of the important mitigations for the flattening of the curve. And what we're looking is the flattening of the curve so that we know that we will see cases of COVID-19. We have seen cases. We always said our planning assumption was that we'd see cases. And so what we want to do is try and minimise those numbers of cases so that our healthcare infrastructure can cope. So I think it's reasonable to bring in sensible measures of social distancing, but we don't want to have social isolation.
Can I
Yep.
just add to why now and not last week? Well, it all goes back to what we were saying yesterday about the delay in testing and the change in policy for testing in the UK. That was a game changer for us and made us realise we needed to look at schools and whether we should keep them open and bring forward the Easter holidays. But also that led to the other measures I mentioned that we would be announcing today regarding nightclubs, nighttime economy. We're trying to get that balance right. So we're not saying everything's shut down, but the things that but what we're trying to do is look at the areas of greatest risk and close those down and make sure that we can keep some semblance of normality in other areas where that risk is less.
So, in summary, to answer the question, yes, everybody should understand what social distancing means. Those who are over 65, those who have underlying health conditions need to take extra precaution and take special care. And a reiteration absolutely of the message that we've had throughout this so far. We will continue to review and make evidence-based decisions, the best judgment we can based on the latest information, latest advice. That is what's informing our decisions. But we can't, the decision wouldn't have been appropriate a week ago based on the information and evidence then. We can already see the impact that this is having on the community and our economy. And as Dr. Brink has said, we have to maintain the community have to come with us and stay with us on this journey. It's quite an interesting experience, I think, certainly for us receiving regular contact from the public. We've got people at two ends of the spectrum. You've got those who, frankly, would have had us all marching around in hazmat suits back in January, with the whole island having been shut off at one end of the spectrum, and then at the other end of the spectrum you have those who say we've only got one case in the island, it's just the flu. Now, neither of those ends of the spectrum are right. And what we're dealing with is making sure that the people in the middle are the ones that really understand that it's about balance. It's about balancing the public health risk and balancing the needs of us as a community. And that's what all of these decisions are based on.
And the decisions are so difficult to make because we know this is impacting people's livelihoods. It's impacting people's businesses, what they've been striving to grow and develop, and it's really hitting people in such a short space of time. Gavin has spoken about measures seeking to support businesses, and there might be more coming through. Employment Social Security is giving some advice today about the support that they will be giving to people. So this is just completely changing the landscape for the islands, and we just really so we come here every day and we give this press conference, but we're not doing it just as talking heads. We feel it. We really do.
Could I just add to that, in terms of the information that's provided online, I think it's important to set out that there are email address and contact numbers on there for those in our community, with businesses with financial concerns, or just have general inquiries with the decisions that have been taken today that haven't been taken lightly around what that means for our hospitality sector. There is information lines that where further clarification can be sought. And there's also information and contact details for those around incapacity benefit for where that may be appropriate as well. So I really do urge businesses, members of the community that would need to seek further advice to check the details and make specific inquiries. And the teams across the states of Guernsey and our agencies will do their very best to help.
Just building on that last point from Jason there about the access to information, particularly in relation to financial hardship. There's again information come to the media today, but if anybody wishes to start that process over the weekend, if they want to call 732-516, the lines will be manned down at Edward T. Whedon House. Obviously, we are discouraging people visiting. They should phone or email, but they're already prepared to start that process of engaging with people and understanding what their needs are and responding to that. But I think also Heidi's point is, and as I said earlier, we don't want to be doing any of this, going back to the previous question of why not earlier. We are imposing huge impositions on restrictions on individuals' lives and their rights, their rights to property as business owners, and the restrictions on their businesses and the restrictions on the civil liberties of us all as individuals, as we can see with, for example, the emergency regulations around the ability to detain people if they don't comply with self isolation. These are massive changes in society that have happened in the space of less than 2 weeks. These are not things you do lightly, and there has to be a really good evidence base to it. So I think it would have been wholly inappropriate to be doing some of the things we're talking about now a week ago, a month ago, or 6 weeks ago, as perhaps some people might now imagine that we should have done.
Can I just, sorry, Rosa, can I just mention while we're there, it's very conscious of the fact for those who don't have online access, there are two numbers that I should let you, we should let you have, which is the support line for general business inquiries and financial concerns. There's a line here, 743-803. And for those around incapacity benefits for those inquiries, 732-507. So it's just to share those with you.
Gavin, can I just quickly jump
Rory.
in?
Yep.
With regard to the licensing issues that have come out today, we have got additional police officers on this evening to work with licensees and establishments. I fully understand there may be lots of questions, and all I would do is encourage licensees to contact the police station on 725-111 and the officers who are assigned to duty this evening purely to deal with licensees and questions they may have, which may include them wanting a visit. We will arrange that because we're here to work with the licensees who we have a good relationship with.
Okay, I've just been passed a message that the website at the moment is experiencing some difficulties. We're aware of that. We're working on that. I suspect that may be as a result of some significant high demand upon it. There's also I mentioned contacting by email, a new email address as well. In addition to that number I passed you, 732-516, there's also Hardship Fund, all one word, at gov.gg. Hardship Fund at gov.gg. Next question.
Are the phone lines going to stay open over the weekend?
Yes. Yes, they will.
Thank you.
You mentioned that the next case is in the bailiwick, the second confirmed case. Are you able to confirm whether it is in Guernsey or one of the other islands?
They're in Guernsey.
Okay.
How did they travel to the island?
I'm not going to go into the specific details about that individual because we're busy doing the contact tracing as we speak. So I think we'd like to keep it more general information. These are people that are involved, and we've always said we want to respect their confidentiality, their privacy. From our point of view, our contact tracing processes are really robust. So anyone who needs to be contacted, who might have had contact with this individual, will be contacted. So the initial interview that we do with the case is over an hour. It is in that much detail. We literally map out hour by hour where they were, and that provides us with a very detailed information as to who we need to contact. So we want to balance giving all of you information and being open and transparent, but also respect the fact that these are people, they're patients of ours, and we want to respect their privacy and their confidentiality. So we want to balance the two by giving you the information, assuring the population of the bailiwick that if they have been in contact with anyone with COVID-19, they'd be identified through our contact tracing processes, but also respect and allow the person to recover in peace.
Okay, next question.
How you sort of police the fact that maybe some pubs potentially could still be serving alcohol to people who aren't buying food?
Okay, I don't know whether you want to comment on
Well,
that.
as explained, we've got additional staff on tonight. There is absolutely no impact at the moment upon policing and the resources around policing. So we will be doing our normal licensed premises visits. I think the legislation is quite clear that quite a number of premises will be closed. Therefore, those that are open are going to be fewer, and we can do drop-in visits. That said, licensees predominantly in this jurisdiction work with us. We have confidence in them, and to become a licensee there are certain responsibilities. So very much the licensing trade in the main polices itself, because that's how the licensing system works, and we don't see any reason to undermine that.
And again, I'm going to take the opportunity with that question to re-emphasise that I think it will police itself, because the industry needs to understand the message that we're giving very clearly today, that we will take further measures. If it is in any way we've got any concerns about it not operating effectively, we will have no choice, and it will not be a decision that we will welcome, but we will have to do it in the interest of the community. So it is, I think, it's constantly re-emphasising to those people who have not yet heard and understood this message. This is very serious, and we are taking it very seriously, and everybody needs to take it seriously. The licensed trade, of course, includes restaurants as well. They need to be thinking about actually how they now really separate out, create real opportunities for social distancing within their environment. They're going to have reduced custom, we know that. But they need to really be demonstrating to the community, so the community has confidence, but also to us, that they're taking their responsibilities seriously. Otherwise, their business will be further damaged, unfortunately, until we get through this crisis.
Do you not see that everybody might actually plan on going out tonight? They're not now going out tonight. Might end up going, everyone come round to my house, let's go round and drink there.
It's possible. Again, it comes back to the fact we do have to expect the community to take a responsible attitude, particularly if we're talking about a lot of young people. A lot of young people will be living at home with parents. And yes, frankly, we do expect the parents to be getting a grip, whether their children are over 18 or not. They need to be having that conversation so that the whole family understands the risks, not only to that family, within the family, to the individual themselves, because they are not immune, to their grandparents, but to the whole community. It cannot be overemphasized. We clearly, we're not living in a police state. Rory does not have the resources for us to prevent any gathering anywhere on the island above a certain size. But the key message is, if people continue to ignore this, if we do end up have evidence of serious community seeding, then we will end up in the same position as a number of other jurisdictions, whether that's France, Germany or Italy, where people end up being effectively confined to their own homes for a period. That is what we're desperately trying to avoid for this community. That is an even more serious position. So if anybody is thinking that they want to get round this by just all huddling together in a house and having a good time, forget about it. Think again. Go and watch Netflix and get a takeaway.
Dr. Brink, are you able to say whether the second patient's been treated at home or in hospital?
They're being managed at home. As I said, they're doing really well, and we'd expect 80% of our cases to be managed at home, and I think that's really important. And we support people whilst they're being managed at home with daily safe and well phone calls and so on, and we try and make them feel that we are involved with them. Their GP, their primary care are also involved. So we provide a safety net of care around the person at home. Of course, should they need hospital admission, they absolutely will get admitted to hospital. So it's all about on providing the best possible clinical care for that person.
Nicola, we've obviously checking on the gov.gg coronavirus and test results, and they've not been updated as yet. As you said, there might be some problems. There's quite a lot of outstanding results according to this. Is that a concern for you, or do you expect that to sort of level out soon?
That's a concern to me, and it's one of the reasons why I am concerned and why we are looking at these additional measures, because we don't have a good grip on exactly where we are. We have a bunch of outstanding test results, and so that gives us an essence of an unknown within the community. And so that's why we're working so hard to get those resolved. We've been in contact with the laboratory in the UK today. What we're really hoping to do is expedite the availability of on-island testing, because that means that we can design our own testing policies that are right for us in the bailiwick. And that is very much in line with what the World Health Organization is saying, is that we have to have the right program for our jurisdiction. And it's something that we're absolutely determined about. I think it's really important. We'd like to enhance the testing and make testing really widespread on the island and try and get it done rapidly. And that'll give us a real-time picture of where we are and enable us to put in effective measures to prevent further transmission. And we feel that's absolutely key to our response.
And just to echo, fantastic from Heidi that we've got the facilities now. How long will it be
very
till
exciting.
How long will it be till we're up and running?
There's another piece of kit that we're waiting for. So the extraction platform's here. We're waiting for the light cycler, so that needs to still come on island. We're expediting a lot of the things. For example, the staff are undergoing Skype training. We're seconding a member of the public health team who has experience in this technology to work in pathology for a time. So all of this, it's a case of, from our point of view, and for I think for everyone working on Zion, it's where you're needed, you go. So it's that flexible thing that we'll work together and we'll get it going as soon as we can. We are dependent on the second piece of kit arriving, and that's really going to be critical. But then once it's on island, we would hope to have results within 24 hours. So
As
either
I
the
said,
same
it's
day or
on
the
it-
next day.
It's on its way.
Yeah.
It's been packed and off, and we
Yeah.
can track it.
Do we have a rough time frame?
No, not at the moment.
And I think the good news that overnight is the fact that the UK's change in policy to only be testing, I think, in hospital cases,
Yes.
or is it only health workers now?
No. Well, it's changing all the time.
It's changing all the time. But anyway, it doesn't really matter what the UK's policy is in relation to testing. That isn't going to affect us. We've had confirmation that because we are in a different position, because we do remain in the contained phase, we can continue with the kind of testing which Dr. Brink has been undertaking and wishes to continue undertaking. And that's very important until such time as we do have the on-island facility, which not only will increase our capacity and therefore the ability, for example, to be able to get the schools back open again, which is obviously one of the objectives, but also to get the speed turned around as well.
So in theory, once we're up and running, then nightclubs can resume again, bars can...
No, it depends on how the testing results come back. And even now, if we're seeing the backlog come back and it says, look, it seems like we might have community seeding here, we've got to be very careful. It just really depends on what that stage is. I mean, Nikki can say more, but really this is to make sure that, given the situation we are in, we lock it right down. It might be that we can ease off in certain areas or change the way we do stuff, but this is just to make sure that we lock it down now and contain any potential spread if there is any.
Yeah. And I think that goes with our approach to evidence-based decision-making, correct for our community. And this was one of the uncertainties we have at the moment. Once we roll out enhanced testing across the island, we'll have a good idea of where we are, and then we can make decisions based on the information we have and not on speculation. And that's really important. And I wouldn't like to start second-guessing what we'll do. I'd like to work out where we are, sit down, look at that with my team, and then work out where we should go from there.
Yeah, I think it is important that we do manage expectations in relation to this. Clearly, as we said, we don't want to take any more repressive measures than are absolutely essential, but we need to the establishment of whether we have got community seeding is clearly, and the pace at which that's happening is clearly the key priority that will then inform all our decision making. The reason for having these restrictions for 10 days is clearly that will deal with this weekend and next weekend. It also allows for a significant period of engagement with the industry, which obviously hasn't been able to take place today, to be able to establish the ability to be able to work with the objectives that we have, again based on the evolving information and evolving cases, so that if we need to change the regulations, either tighten them up or relax them. I'm not going to give any indication of which way they will go in 10 days' time. That process, we'll be able to do that next week based on the latest information, but also really it gives an opportunity really for the industry to step up and show how they can work with government in order to keep their businesses open, but doing it safely in the interest of the community, which is the priority.
The point here is we just haven't had the luxury of time. I mean, government usually goes out there and consults for several weeks or months and then puts papers towards committees, and then that's approved, and then it might go to somewhere else, and then it's brought in. And we just haven't got that luxury at the moment. But that engagement that Gavin mentioned will go on. It's the Committee for Home Affairs and behind all this, and they will be working with the industry to make sure things work smoothly and to support them.
Just talking about support for the industry, you know that earlier this week you did announce plans for businesses. Do you think now you will need to increase that financial offering to them in the light of this, because obviously they've got a lot of staff and weekends, presumably, when they take in most money?
Yeah, the only honest answer I can give is I don't really know that at this stage. The states, in fact, as we speak, are debating an emergency policy letter which Policy and Resources Committee has laid in order to give effect to what was announced previously. But again, to reiterate, we absolutely recognise that is only an initial offer. We do need to understand where the stress is, and that again comes back to we need to have that engagement not only with businesses but with individuals, and then we'll respond accordingly. But I think it's probably worth speaking a little bit about that policy letter, because again it was only lodged before midday, and it's again moving at a pace which is very unusual for it to be adopted within hours. It really confirms all the measures that I spoke about earlier in terms of giving access to the £30 million which is in the General Revenue Account Reserve. There is more available, but that would require us to come back to the States, but that's certainly enough to be going along with. But also, as importantly, working with the banks on a loan guarantee scheme, because as with the UK, as with Jersey, we do expect the banks to be the first port of call to be supporting businesses, and what we want to do is to enable the banks to be able to enter that dialogue and safely be able to extend credit. So, and we're putting proposals where the states would be an 80% guarantor for up to £50 million of bank lending. So that, again, is another significant commitment being made on behalf of taxpayers to support the economy. Next question.
I noticed in some of the States of Guernsey social media posting today about social distancing, it said in the avoid column, it mentioned restaurants and gyms. If those places are remaining open, what do you suggest people should do?
I think it goes back to the social distancing within those areas, and we debated this long and hard about what should be opened and what shouldn't be open. And if you think of the role of fitness and so on in our general well-being, bearing in mind this is going to be months, and we want our population to remain healthy and resilient. So things like restaurants, if they can spatially distance within restaurants, have their tables 2 meters apart, have enhanced cleaning, there are ways in which at this stage we could potentially keep them open. We're not giving any guarantees in the long term, because we need to look at where we go. Things could get easier, they could get harder. It all depends on how successful we are at containing things here. So if we are really successful at flattening the curve, we'll get a little bit of herd immunity, but our sick patients wouldn't breach our ability to cope. So it's finding that correct balance, and it is at the moment an assessment on each intervention. Is it required? Is it proportionate? Is there evidence to support it? And is it the right thing to do now? Sometimes we're going to get it right, sometimes we're going to get it wrong. What we are saying to you is every time we assess this, we will do our best to look at the evidence, look at its local applicability, and make the best possible decision we can at that particular time. And one of the things we've been incredibly grateful is how supportive the community has been. We've tried to explain our decision making because I honestly believe this is a whole island's effort. This is not a public health and social care. This is everyone. And the only way we're going to get through this is all together.
Could you just provide an update for people on exactly what is being done in terms of social security? You obviously announced the Hardship Fund for people who are struggling financially, but how exactly, or do you know at this stage, will that be allocated to individuals, and how will that work?
In terms of the access to the Hardship Fund, no, I mean, that's actually something that the Committee for Employment and Social Security have been, I think, working on and meeting on today. So again, it's one of those areas where it's moving at pace. Jason, I don't know what you've got to
Yeah, I think just in terms of that, I would just encourage anyone to make an individual approach and talk about their particular circumstances if there are concerns, just to understand what that means for them. And I think that's quite important at this stage to, you know, then they can be guided to what is most appropriate for the circumstances they find themselves in.
Any other questions?
Sorry.
No, please.
Obviously, we've had the rule about self-isolation, and for 14 days, people coming back in and out of the country. If people break those rules, what is the policing in terms of making sure that people do get back home if they are suddenly not self-isolating during that time?
Perhaps Nikki and Rory, you could talk about how you go about the approach of expecting people to self-isolate and what you do about it if it doesn't happen. I don't know who wants to start.
The first thing
effort,
is
so-
it's a very important aspect of what we're trying to do, and we from law enforcement will take action on any information to follow up to see whether there's any providence and legitimacy to that. And depending on the facts, in consultation with our colleagues in health, I can assure you it will be followed up. You may have seen that one of the other Crown dependencies is well represented in the media of having actually arrested someone who they've obviously identified who had breached their similar legislation. So as the Chief Minister said, we work with the community. It's a community approach. But if you go against the law and you break what we're putting in place, obviously law enforcement is there to deal with that element of it.
So would there be an instance where you would be prepared to arrest someone if they broke the self-isolation rules?
Absolutely.
There is a continuum, but yes, an arrest is open to us, but there are more ways of dealing with the situation other than just an arrest. But if we were forced by the circumstances into doing that, yes, we would have to do that.
That absolutely was the purpose of the regulation, to give real teeth to enforcement. So we intentionally gave detention powers to the police or through the medical officer of health to enable that to happen. Any other questions? No? All right.
I just want to say on behalf of us, thanks. I know this has been a really tough week for all of you, and we do appreciate what you're doing. We're all islanders. We're all heeding what you're saying, and on behalf of all of us, thank you very much, because it's a lot of hard work, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you. I think the role you play is incredibly important in helping get this message out to the community. So we are grateful to you for making yourselves available at short notice. And in the way that I've said it once before this week, and I'm happy to repeat it. I think the media is assisting greatly in handling this with great responsibility, and also emphasising that point that it is about local solutions to this international problem. And I think the fact you are local media really does help and assist in that. So thank you for the role you play. And I'm pretty confident that we'll be seeing you soon. I won't say exactly when, but I'm sure we will see you soon. And thank you very much. And thank you also to all those who also are following this through the social media feeds as well. We do now recognise that it's an important way to communicate to some of our population, understanding that also that there are many who aren't accessing information in this way, and therefore they will be relying on traditional sources. So many thanks.
Can we just say thank you to those for the patience as well. We recognise, as Deputy St Pierre said before, just in real time just how quickly we are having to put out information, and sometimes we just haven't got the detail. There are a number of people across the section on behalf of the Chief Executive and all of the senior team. Thank you to all of those and across those multiple agencies that are working to provide that. And just thank you for that, for your understanding. And we are endeavouring to get that information out as quickly as we possibly can, based on the fast-changing circumstances.
And feedback's welcome about how we can do it better. And if you've got other ideas, it'd be fantastic.
And hopefully my shorter introduction was welcomed by everyone as well. I mean, our ambition is to be completely open and transparent. Again, the speculation that we've, in some way would want to be concealing information from the public, I guess there's always going to be those conspiracy theories. It is not in anyone's interests that we should be doing that in any way whatsoever. So a real message of reassurance that we will get information out as quickly as we can, but recognising, as Jason has said, that sometimes you do need to communicate with certain people before other people. So there's a way to communicate, but there is no intention whatsoever to conceal any information. What we know, we will tell people. So thank you very much.
Thank you.